Today I'm going to talk about the subsidies in the public sector. If you've heard my previous videos, you'll understand that the public servants are a privileged class in Portugal. They are essentially first-rate citizens, and they get all sorts of benefits, all sorts of protection from whoever is in power, especially if it's the left or the far left, even though the center left and the center will do the same, even if more moderately. The subsidies that I'm going to cover, they are essentially the weirdest ones, but there are many, many more. We are talking about hundreds of subsidies that will complement the wages of the public servants. The public servants, by default, they are already quite above the average in Portugal. We are talking about wages roughly 1,700 euros on average, while everyone else that isn't a public servant will get maybe 1,000 euros, maybe 1,100 euros. So the public servants are already quite above everyone else in terms of wages, and these are supported by the taxpayers, of course. So we would expect at least quality public services, which Portugal doesn't have. Nothing works, basically, and the cuts, the raises of taxes that the current government, the left and far left coalition, has promoted has made things even worse, because while the public servants are getting everything that they want, everyone else is just paying more taxes and getting worse and worse public services. As you might understand, there are many people that are not happy with this. The only people that are happy with this are the public servants themselves, and of course whoever is in their families, because in Portugal, even if they are wrong, even if they know that it's completely unfair, they will tend to side with whatever benefits them. They don't care if it's hurting anyone. They don't care if it's putting the whole country in danger. It's just the typical Portuguese culture to accept things that are wrong. Even they admit that they are wrong, but they don't care. As long as they are fine, they don't care that no one else is fine. The politicians, of course, take advantage of this, and in 2009, for example, when the country was already near bankruptcy, José Sócrates, who was the prime minister at the time and went to elections with a majority in parliament, and in 2009, before the elections, he raised the wages of the public servants, and he won the elections, even though everyone already knew that he lied constantly about the deficit. He lied constantly about the debt. He lied constantly about the state of the country. But he raised the public servants, and there you go, he's government again. Because the abstention in Portugal is quite high, so the politicians know perfectly well that their voter base will be the public servants. So they please the public servants at all costs. The public servants will always get what they want. And sometimes they may make some sort of theater, and they seem to be having some sort of issues. They're not reaching an agreement, but that's all theater. They will eventually get what they want. It's just a matter of time, and it will only happen with the left and the far left. The center left and the center, they will essentially do the same, but they do it more moderately. They will not give everything that they want, and they will spread it in time, in more time, I mean. They will not immediately grant everything that the public servants want, but they grant it anyway. As I said many times, the center-left and center in Portugal, they are essentially socialists anyway. They apply socialism anyway. They just do it more moderately. But the subsidies themselves that I want to talk about, they are the weirdest ones, but please make sure that you understand that we are talking about hundreds of subsidies that the public servants get. We are talking about nearly 300 subsidies, and they were costing about 700 million euros to the taxpayers. And this goes directly just for the public servants. No one else gets them. So the taxpayers, all of them, they are paying for benefits of a minority. A minority which in Portugal, the direct public servants, they are about 700,000. And when the left or the far left are in power, these numbers always rise. Because in 2015, the number of public servants were much lower, because we had just gone through the financial adjustment period, because we were in bankruptcy. The problem was the expense of the state. The problem was the debt. And so we had to make cuts. And those cuts were supposed to be on the expense side, but it was prevented. It was not allowed to do cuts to the expense, and especially to the public servants themselves, because they are protected. They cannot be fired, even though there is no law that prevents them from being fired. But they are prevented from being fired because the politicians that are in power, they want to make sure that the public servants keep voting for them. So they make sure that they are protected and that they get everything they want. Anyway, going to the subsidies themselves, I'm going to talk about the weirdest ones. But again, they are hundreds of subsidies. I'm going to cover just a few. One of them is the subsidy to ring a bell or raise a flag. This is a subsidy paid by the Ministry of Education and Science to an undefined number of people. For this subsidy, they don't even know who receives it, which is quite amazing. It just shows how things are done in the public sector. You know, the taxpayer money is not respected, is not handled with care. It's simply distributed among the clientele of whoever is in power. And so apparently there's some job for people, an undetermined number of people in the Ministry of Education and Science, where they sometimes have to raise a flag or ring a bell. And if that happens, they will receive this subsidy. The next subsidy is one of my favorites. And it's related with the conductors for the subway trains. The conductors for the subway trains, I thought, had a job. And that job entails them moving the train forward and stopping the train when the train reaches a station. When they reach a station, they will open the doors of the subway so that whoever is in the subway train will get out, and whoever is in the platform to get into the subway train will get in. And then the conductor will close the doors and move the subway train forward to the next station. But apparently I am wrong. This is not part of the job description of the conductor of a subway train in Portugal, because they have a subsidy, an extra to their wage, their monthly wage, to open and close the doors of the subway train. So they apparently, in their job description, they only need to move the subway train forward and then stop it when a station is reached. Without this subsidy, they would not open or close doors. This subsidy is also equivalent to 30% of the monthly wage. So, in addition to their monthly wage, they receive 30% because of this subsidy to open and close doors, which I thought would also be part of the job description by default, but apparently not. It's a subsidy in Portugal. Then one of those that clearly was created to give money to people. They wanted to give money to certain people, and specifically 12 people in the Ministry of Agriculture. They wanted to give money, and they had to justify it, so they created a very ridiculous subsidy, which is a subsidy to face the sea. And these people, these 12 people, apparently in their jobs, they sometimes have to, I don't know, go into a boat or be close to the sea, something like that. If that happens, in whatever event they are attending for the Ministry of Agriculture, they will receive this subsidy to face the sea. This costs 13,000 euros a year to the taxpayer. And then we have a classic one, I think, and it's related with 179 public servants in the Ministry of Finances. And this is the subsidy of isolation. It means that whoever is working alone will get this subsidy, even though this should already be part of the job description, right? If they are going to work alone, probably is part of the work description. But anyway, it's a subsidy for 179 public servants, the subsidy of isolation. Then the subsidy that proves what I said above, which is the fact that many of these, they don't have a purpose except the fact that they want to give away money, probably to people on their families. The left and the far left love to populate the government and also city halls and other public institutions with family members and friends and so on. And so when they want to give away money to these people, to their friends, to their family members, they have to create these weird named subsidies. They have to basically just pull it out of their asses, the names for these subsidies. They make absolutely no sense, as I've already showed you in some of them, but they have to justify them. And in this next subsidy, they clearly didn't care about it. We are talking about a single worker that was receiving a subsidy of nearly 6,000 euros a year for the Ministry of Defense, for a job in the Ministry of Defense. And they named it undetermined subsidy. They didn't even give it a name. They just say, oh, this guy or girl will get an extra 6,000 euros a year because I want to. Because, yeah, that's it. It's the undetermined subsidy. They didn't even bother to find a name for it, even if it was the stupidest thing ever, but they didn't even bother to give it a name. And then, this is clearly one of my favorites. It's the subsidy or prize for going to work. Several public servants, and they state here that it's for the Ministry of Environment, but I know that this is not just for the Ministry of Environment. There are other areas in the public sector where people get a subsidy just for going to work, meaning that when you do a contract, and you're not a public servant, but when you do a contract to or with a company, you will exchange your work for a salary or a wage at the end of the month. If you don't go to work in certain days, let's say a week during that month, then your salary, your wage will be cut. But for the public servants, they actually get an extra amount of money each month just to go to work. No one else gets this, obviously, outside of the public sector. But some public servants will get a subsidy just because they went to work. I would assume, and this is pure logic speaking, that if you have a contract where you exchange your work with money at the end of the month, then you will need to perform that work to receive money. But no, for the public servants, if they go to work, which apparently doesn't need to happen, but if they go to work, then they get even more money because they went to work. They already have a contract that states that they have to go to work, but they will get extra money for that. And then there's a subsidy for a vacation colony. Apparently this covered nearly 800 people in the Social Security Ministry, which costs a bit more than 21,000 euros a year to the taxpayer. And it's a subsidy for people to go to a vacation colony. That's where the taxpayer money in Portugal is being spent. And it's no wonder that we are so poor and so miserable, because some people do get something, but it's not the majority. It's only a very small minority that gets everything. And finally, the one I'm going to cover is actually a subsidy or a reduction in price of the train tickets for nearly 5,000 people of the Ministry of Justice. These people, if you've heard my video about the justice system in Portugal, they do basically nothing. They do absolutely no work. I'm sure they go to work and probably get the subsidy where they go to work, so they get more money. I'm sure they get that, but in terms of work, they are absolutely incompetent. They do absolutely nothing, and that's why the justice system simply doesn't work in Portugal. It's extremely slow. Oh, and it definitely doesn't work for anyone that has actually committed big crimes, and especially if they are white-collar crimes. Those people will never see the inside of a jail cell. But anyway, apparently they even get these reduction in train tickets, which is hilarious. Even though they do nothing, they still get all sorts of benefits that everyone would love to get, but they don't get it, of course, unless they are very special members of the elite, which is the public servants in Portugal. These are the subsidies I wanted to cover. Please let me know if you know more of these subsidies in the comment section. I know a few more, but these were the most, the weirdest ones, I guess. But anyway, I hope you like this, and I'll see you next time.